This is an interview with Mr. Herman Dozier at Miles College, April 16th, 1996, 2 p.m. Mr. Dozier, you grew up in Birmingham?
Yes, I did.
Where were you born in Alabama?
I was born in Pratt City. Actually, I was born at, the hospital there on the south side, but my family was living in Pratt City.
Okay. And how long did you live in the Pratt City area?
From the time I was born until I think I was age of 5.
And then you moved?
And then I moved my mother to Smithfield area. Okay.
And where did you go to school as a youngster? Do you remember any of your situation to things during school time?
Yes. I went to South Pratt, and my family moved me, like I said, I went to Smithfield, and I started going to Lincoln Elementary up on the Professor R.C. Johnson.
Okay.
And I remember Lincoln very well because he used to have us to bring bricks to school.
Bricks?
Yes, the students had to bring, we helped build the walkways.
Really?
The kids would bring a brick to school every day.
Uh-huh.
And I was also at Carrie Tugger's up on the Professor Winston.
Okay. When you brought the bricks to school at Lincoln, did the men, the older people, put the walkway in, or were the children allowed to assist?
No, the adults, they built it. But this was a project that Professor Johnson wanted the kids to do, to say, I helped, did this, I noticed I've been back to visit, and the sidewalks are still there.
Is your brick still there?
I hope so.
That's you're a part of history then. So
well, I hope it's still there.
Yes, yes. And so you left Tuggle. Then you went to Tuggle. How was Tuggle for you?
It was okay in a way, but it was still, we had, like now, you can't whoop the kids in school. And Wimp, what we call him Wimp, he had a way of whooping us when we do wrong.
Who was that, the principal, your teacher?
Yes, the principal.
What was his name, Mr. Wimp?
Professor Winston.
Okay.
He would line you up, and he gets to go down the line with a little strap. And so I used to hate that,
Oh.
So I didn't care too much for tuggers.
So does that mean that you were a very active little boy?
Oh, yes. As all kids are, I would think I was a little more than some of them.
Okay. And then you left Tuggle, and where did you go then?
When I left Tuggles, I went to Parker High. And from Parker Annex, then from Annex to the main building.
Okay. Do you have any recollections of things that happened while you were at Parker? Of course, that was during segregation.
Oh, yes. I guess I was more active in the athletic field because I was a track runner and also a football player for Parker.
Okay. What about when you would play ball and football and go to, I guess the games were at Legion Field? What about segregation then? Did you notice anything any different, or a lot of things that were different as it relates to playing ball and the crowds and traveling back and forth?
Well, for one thing, I noticed we could only go to Legion Field at certain times. And when the whites are using the field, blacks could go, but they would have to sit way up top. You couldn't sit down at the bottom where you could really see anything, and they would let you come in, and you had to stay there until when they were ready to leave. To the whites, they go out one way and you go out the other.
Why do you think they did it that way?
I used to wonder about that, and I asked my parents about it. And my grandmother, whom I love very dearly, she told me this is something that the white man feel that he is inferior.
That the black man was inferior?
Black man was inferior, compared to him, yet and still. Blacks had to go into the whites' home and work and for a little or nothing. And I still couldn't understand all this, until I grew up. And once I grew up, in fact, I grew up into this system where you could lay down at night and wake up and hear a bomb go off someone home is blown up, some black person home, you know. I never had the opportunity to see the Klans in their sheets until I was older.
Well, let's go back to when we were talking about growing up and parents working for the white man or white families. You were telling me that your mother worked in downtown Birmingham?
Right.
And what did she do? What kind of work
She was an elevator operator at Brown Marks Building.
Did she ever tell you any of the stories or situations that would happen or conversations that people would have when they would get on the elevator? Because of course, her being an elevator operator probably felt that she didn't count because she was a black woman. And
well, I don't know. My mother was a very strong black woman, and she never tried to discuss anything, you know, like that to me, unless someone would ask. Other than that, she very seldom would discuss it, but she always told me whatever I do to hold my head up, that I am somebody.
Sure.
And I loved her for that. You know, no matter what I did, she still loved me. And she worked hard. I think I grant you that. She worked very hard.
Sure.
In order to put me in school and take care of me, because my father and my mother wasn't together. So I was reared by my mother for a while, and then I went to stay with my father later on in years.
So did you ever overhear any conversations of when you used to go to the Brown Marks building? If you went to work with your mom or went to visit her down there, conversations that some of the white passengers on the elevator would have?
Well, I can recall one year my mother come home. She was very upset, and I asked her about it. You know, she was saying about how whites was calling the other blacks niggers, and this kind of upset her very much. And I was wondering why when she told me, she said, "Don't worry, just remember, they will call you these names. That don't mean that you have to be what they call you." And I learned from her. I said, "Well, what is the word nigger?" Because I wanted to know.
What age were you then, you think?
Oh, I think I was around 8 or 9.
And you didn't know what that word meant?
I knew what they would call me, but I didn't know what it really meant and why. And she explained it to me.
What did she say?
That, you know, when they first brought us from Africa as slaves, they had found the blacks as a river that runs through Africa called the Nile. And at that time, the white man couldn't say nigger, he said the Niger. And it went from Niger to nigger. And these things, you know, she taught me, and I began to, as I grew up, then I started reading books because my aunt, who was a school teacher, she used to bring me books and she would explain different things to me about it. And this is why, as I grew up, then I knew who I was, even till today.
What about the community where you lived when you lived in Smithfield? Do you recall anything about the movement or things that happened in the neighborhood or NAACP or SCLC or church gatherings and hearing adults talk about it?
Well, in coming up at that time, SCLC was not in the focus at all. In the neighborhood that I grew up in, which was as they would say, as the white would say, a second-class neighborhood or whatever you wanted to be, was a lot of doctors and teachers, principals, and all that in that area.
But for the African American community, that would have been a very affluent community.
Oh, yes, because I recall Dr. Plump, Dr. Belgium, Professor Johnson, who lived directly across in front of us, a lot of school teachers, my aunt who taught school, and her husband was a principal, and what have you. So I grew up in a pretty tight family there.
Yeah. So what do you call them? Any meetings or NAACP, any gatherings in the community? Were those people involved in the movement?
Well, if they had it, I didn't know anything about it at that time.
When you grew up and as you finished high school, and did you continue on and go to college or in the military, or what did you start? Did you go to work then?
Well, when I come out of high school, I was already involved in the civil rights movement at the time because I took a trip to Chicago with my cousin. And on my way back, instead of coming back to Birmingham, I I was going to meet a friend of mine in North Carolina, which is Greensboro.
Okay.
That's where they had to sit in at the lunch counter. And I happened to be there in the restaurant at that particular day. And I was sitting there also when they arrested everybody that was sitting there, because they had asked everybody to move. And the young college kids, they didn't move, so I didn't move either.
So you were sitting at the counter
I was sitting at the counter, so when I went to jail with them, I guess as well, you know. And when I got out, I come back to Birmingham, and I was telling my mom about what had happened.
How was that day for you, sitting at that counter? Were you afraid? And when they took you to jail, share with us what that was like?
It was a sort of frightening thing, you know, because I had never been involved in anything like this. And the first thing they came and told us, well, nigger, didn't the white woman tell you to get up? And so, well, I didn't say anything. The young man that spoke, he said, well, I paid my money. And I think if I pay my money, I'm able to sit anywhere that I paid my money. So she took my money. He said, yeah, she may have took your money, but that didn't mean for you to sit here, you know.
Oh.
And he asked us to leave, so no one moved. So they snatched us off the seat, and instead of walking us, they drug us out the door at what we call going limp. And they carried us to the jailhouse there in Greensboro, North Carolina, until one of the NAACP lawyers got us out.
So was it overnight or several hours?
No, we stayed in I think I stayed in one or two nights, if I can recall.
Were you frightened while you were in there? What kind
Well,
of treatment?
yes, because I knew what the white man was doing to the blacks at that time. And I'd heard so much about blacks in North Carolina and what had happened. Sure, I was afraid I'd be a fool if I said I wasn't.
So when you got out, what happened then?
Well, when I got out, I returned to Birmingham. Well, when I returned to Birmingham, Birmingham was heated up. When I say heated up with Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. He was trying to integrate Phillip High School with his kids. So I joined in with Fred, and we walked to Phillip High School. Although we had rocks thrown at us, and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth was beaten. You know, I saw him beaten Merciful with chains, kicked, drug. But that didn't stop him, because I have to give him the credit. The man had guts, and he was determined to not let them turn him around.
Sure.
And he continued to go until they accepted his kids into the school.
Well, what age were you during that time?
Oh, I think I was about 17.
Okay. And so is that how you initially got started with the movement? You were in Carolina and just happened to be sitting at the counter and
When I come back to Birmingham, Fred had his thing going. Well, I have a cousin that lives in Montgomery. Montgomery had the bus boycott going on. I and some old friends of mine, we went to Montgomery to loan a hand in any way we could. That's when we started doing the pooling, hauling people from one place to another. Because that's when I first heard Dr. King speak. Because I didn't know who Dr. King was.
Okay.
And that's when I first heard him speak. And I said to myself, now this man here is a great man. And I don't know why I said it, but I did, you know. And I listened very carefully to what he was saying when he was telling the people not to ride the buses. If you have to work, walk, carpool. Well, at that time, the police in Montgomery started stopping every car that had blacks in it, hauling them home, harassing them.
Oh, really?
And so that didn't stop them, because they said, if we can't ride, we'll walk. But a lot of the elder guys, they continued to carry people to and from, you know, in their cars. So I left after that, went back to Birmingham, and I stayed in Birmingham for a while until the bus boycott was over.
Okay.
And once that was over, there was a gentleman from SCLC, Dr. Randolph Blackwell. He's dead now. He was one of Dr. King's advisors. He and I was talking, and he asked me how would I like to join, the group. And at first, I really didn't think anything about it in that sense. So he kept talking to me, and finally I said, okay. And the first place that he sent me was to Coretta King's hometown in Marion.
Oh, really?
And that's where I started, there on the voter registration drive.
You said that you had heard Dr. King speak, and you knew then that he was that he was a wonderful person. What was his speech like? What was he talking about?
It was just a speech that I never heard, before. The tone of his speaking, sort of goes through you. It's the way that he would speak compared. I listened to a lot of ministers speak, but never like this. I don't know. The man had something that can go through you. Either it will make you move, or you have to leave.
So what did your mom think about all this involvement?
Well, you want to know the truth? I didn't let my mother know. I'm serious. When my mother found out about that, I had been involved in the movement for 5 years.
Well, how did she not know? I mean, if you were going to meetings and doing different things.
Well, see, because when I left, when they sent me to Marion, my mother didn't know I was gone. Didn't know where I was going. I just told her that I was getting ready to leave town.
Oh.
And I went to Marion, and when she saw me again, I told her, because I had on a uniform that one of the guys in the movement had made for SCOC.
Okay.
A young man by the name of R.B. Cotton Reader.
Yes.
And Cotton Reader had made a jean outfit with the hand on the pocket, white and black. So I had the outfit on when I come home. My mother thought I was in the Air Force because it was blue. And when I finally explained to her, she said, Lord, my son is gone crazy. But I explained to her what was going on. And I think going to Marion really opened my eyes because I saw things in Marion that I'd never seen before in my life.
Tell us about some of the things that you saw in Marion.
Well, number one, where I was staying, the lady was paying a large sum of money for a little shack that she was staying in, where you could look through the roof and see the sun or see the moon at night when you're lying down. And it really hurt my heart to see this. And as I went through Marion and saw how a lot of blacks was living, all of them wasn't living the same, but yet and still to see those who was really in poverty. That changed my whole life all the way around. And from then, I gave my life to the movement.
Did it make you feel sad
Yes.
and angry and hurt and helpless and all those emotions?
That's why I worked as hard as I did to try to get our blacks registered to vote. We brought in the federal registrars to Marion, and we started registering the blacks by the hundreds.
What reason do you think some African Americans give for either, well, definitely not being a registered voter, and then those that are registered to vote that don't vote?
Repeat that again now.
What do you think about people who are registered to vote and they don't vote, and then African Americans who are not registered voters? I mean, do you think that that's okay, or do you think that we all should be registered voters and use the power of the vote to make a difference in things getting better?
I, wonder about some that is registered and don't vote. And I worry about the ones who are not registered. And for as the power concerned, yes, the voting rights has a lot of power. Because I talk with people that haven't registered. I've had people tell me, say, well, I'm not going to register. And I said, why? It's because I don't see anything I'm going to get out of it. I said, that's the problem right there. See, I look at it this way. If you don't register, then you have no voice.
Absolutely.
But if you register, then you have a voice to speak and say who you want to do this and who you don't want. You have that power. That's what it's about. Because we have fought so long for our blacks to become registers. But yet and still, there are some are too lazy and too trifling. I'm being honest, too trifling to get up and go where it only takes a few minutes.
Sure.
In and out. We go in department stores and stay all day shopping for this white man goods, but yet and still we can't go for 2 minutes and to the polling place. There's something wrong. But yet and still, those who don't vote, whatever comes along, any of the goodies, they're the first and got their hand out.
Oh, of course. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way.
That's right.
When you were growing up and you look back at the movement and the way things were, and you talked about the Klan just a little bit, but do you look back at some of the things that you went through and say, boy, I don't know how I did that, and share with us the one situation that you mentioned about getting your leg broken?
You know, I look back at that quite a bit. A lot of them say you shouldn't look back, but sometimes I look back in order for me to realize where I'm going. And looking back and seeing what the situation is in the 90s, I wonder, was it worth what we was doing compared to what's going on now? And right at this moment, we can't put this on the Klans. We can't put it on nobody but ourselves. See, when they took religion out of the schools, then they started hurting the blacks.
Because you think religion kept
us together. That kept our families together down through the years. This is what kept us together. The churches that we have throughout this country, where the black religions did this on their own. They didn't ask the white man for nothing. They did it. Our black colleges. This is why we was out there struggling in order for the young child to be able to go to school so he can have an education and he can become anybody that he or she want to be. There's nothing out there that we can't be.
What about the Klan and your involvement and you got your leg broken?
Oh, boy. What can you say about the Klans that one doesn't know about? I've had a bad experience with the Klans, true. See, because my leg was broken by the Klans, where they put my leg on a curb and had one of the state troopers who jumped up on my leg and crushed it.
What age were you when that happened?
Oh, I was in my 20s.
What reasoning did they give for doing that?
Demonstration. They were saying that we was agitators. We was in Grenada doing voter registration drive in Grenada, Mississippi. Dr. King, and in fact, we were marching from Memphis, Tennessee on the Jane Meredith March. See, Jane Meredith was shot on Highway 51. SCLC at that time was about to fold, but behind the shooting of Jane Meredith, that brought SCLC back together. And so Dr. King sent for the marchers to come to Memphis. Well, I was in a group what we call the Death Squad. It was 15 of us. We were the first 15 to go in any town before anybody get there.
And you just went in to kind of just see how things were.
Right, but when we marched down Highway 51, we went through a little town called Grenada.
Yeah.
Well, in Grenada, Dr. King spoke. This is the first time I saw a black woman. She said that she didn't know how old she was.
Really?
Dr. King stood on a statue downtown in the park, and the lady said, she said, I've been here all my life, and I don't know how old I am. She said, but they say I'm, she called a number. She said, but that's the first time I ever seen a black man touch that statue.
Really?
And Dr. King stood on the statue and preached. Now, this was a very scary night for me because we all stood around Dr. King on the statue also. And the whites had gathered by the thousands.
And you didn't know something was going to happen.
That's right. And Dr. King, when we left Grenada, we went to a little place called Greenville, Mississippi. That's where the man that killed Jane Meredith, Megas Edward, that's where he was from. And he was there that night when Stokely Carmichael spoke. And he and Stokely had a fight. They locked Stokely up. But Dr. King said that I'm going to send some back to Grenada. He said, I'm going to let Grenada be the home base.
Well, what about looking at the movement then and looking at it now? Do you think there are any things that should have been done any differently then?
Than it is now?
Or did everything go fine in the way that...
At the time, everything, the blacks were showing the power.
Yes.
During that time. The blacks were showing the power. And to look at it now, we have forgotten from which we came, because so many have the jobs now sitting behind the desks in an air-conditioned building, soft cushion seat. We have forgotten how we got there and what it took to get there.
So you don't think people are taking somebody,
They are not taking it. They're not taking it light, because right now there could be someone out there that need help.
Sure.
We are so big now that we ride in our cars and walking. We will pass all by that person who really need help because we don't want to be seen with that person.
Okay. What about today with the movement? Do you think anything should be done different?
Yes, I do.
What?
We need a true leader, because if we don't, our black sisters and brothers are going further back than they ever been in history.
Do you have any idea of who that person could be, in your own opinion? Or is it something that you would like to tackle for yourself?
I am a spokesman for the movement in my own way. But to tackle that, what Dr. King did, I don't think that I could fill his shoes. And I'm being honest with you about that. It takes a mighty, mighty strong man to fill the shoes that, because from what I have seen that man take, although in the movement we took the same thing in a sense, but
he was just more...
He was just a little more, as we said, he was another black Moses. And they don't come too often.
No, they don't. They don't.
And right now we have what we call a bickering amongst ourselves.
Do you think that's what keeps us...
This is what keeping us divided right now, because nobody know who they want to look up to. Because we went too many separate ways. Before Dr. King was killed, we was at a meeting once, and everybody was saying that they would never be involved in certain things, like going to Washington and work. And who the first one was? Andy Young. He became one of the ambassadors.
But others don't feel that way.
And so Jesse went his way, as with the Operation Breadbasket, which he went from there to push.
True.
Okay, there you got Hosea Williams. Jose going his separate way. Abernathy's gone.
So it's just so divisive.
It gets out there.
You think it'll have to be a new person
There
altogether?
got to be a whole new structure of SCLC in order to bring it back. Because right now we have organizations all over the United States and nobody's doing nothing.
What about memorabilia or anything that you had left from the days of sitting at that counter or coming to Birmingham or in Montgomery? Do you have any mementos, any papers or objects that you've kept all these years?
My mother was keeping them for me. But after the home was blown up, a lot of my stuff was misplaced. In fact, I was talking to my mother about it the other night, because she was at church when the house blew up and everything was destroyed. So the only thing I have left now, a friend of mine have a book with a picture of me in it.
Really?
That's all.
But you have the memories.
But I have the memories in here.
And you've shared that with your
Yes.
children. Can they believe?
Well, at first, a lot of them didn't want to believe that I was working for Dr. King, but they was very curious. But after talking with them, and then some saw me on TV, they said, I saw you on TV. I saw you in the Dr. King's March, blah, blah. And so, and by that, they started drawing closer to me. But my own kids, I have taught them from babies up
Okay.
what it's really like for the struggle and what we had to do in order to make it better for them. And like I tell my daughter, because I have all girls, and I tell my daughter to stand up, be a woman, have a strong mind, and a will. I said, because you can do anything that you want to do.
If you have a will to do it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share before we close out?
Well, I guess there's so many things that I could go on and on, with the movement. I realized I lost a lot of my friends that was in the movement.
Mm-hmm.
That is not here, and they're going on.
Mm-hmm.
I could name them: Leon Hall, Lester Hankerson, all these people. Just a few that was real close to me. But they had one. Lester was killed. Leon passed. He died, but Lester was killed. Mm. And Lester was the young man that in Grenada, where the state troopers beat Lester unmerciful, broke his arm, cracked his skull, and they put us all in jail in Grenada. And blood was running out of his body, like wildfire. We tried to talk to the sheriff and everything to let us get out. And I told the sheriff, I said, if you just let us out, we will leave Mississippi and never come back.
But he wouldn't do it.
But they wouldn't do it, but that wasn't the point. All we wanted to do was get us out of jail. Mm-hmm. We know that we wasn't going to leave Mississippi because we were there, had a job to do.
Yeah.
But they refused to let us out. They carried us all to Parchman Prison. Mm. All the staff, and they put each one of us in a car apiece. Mm. And they took all the kids that was with us and put them on a cattle truck with all the manure and stuff in the truck. And just throw them in there like cows. And they carried them to Parchman. And we stayed there until Washington sent orders for them to turn us loose. Now, that was a moment that I never forget, because it was a sad moment, because a lot of people got hurt.
Sure. What would you say in closing to youngsters today about not just voting, but being involved and being involved in a positive way? What would you say to them?
What I want to say to a lot of young, which I try to do every day, is to tell them to stay in school and get an education. Because standing on the corners will not get them two things: jail or hell. Mm-hmm. This is why I beg them to stay in school, because the opportunity is there. If you don't want the teacher to teach you, then you need to leave the school, because this is what they are there for, to teach you so you can learn. It's up to you whether you want to learn.
Yeah.
It's no excuse. And I say to all my black sisters and brothers to please stay out of off the corners, stay in school, mind your parents, and you have a better life.
Well, we certainly thank you for coming out and sharing with us today all this great information.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Well,